is your creative project, to be able to choose a font that represents them well? What are characteristics that you should be keeping in mind?
So a lot of contemporary bands are using similar shortcuts. The most popularized font right now is Futura Extra Bold. It's a really easy to work with typeface that everybody is into. It's a sans serif. It's thick, it's easy to read, and it looks hyper contemporary. So a lot of kind of contemporary bands are using it.
We use it on Foos.
But if everybody's using it, how is it going to represent you like individually?
So it's usually best used as the body copy or the subtype, and then you have your individualized logo. That's more special.
And so when you're doing a logo, you might need to have that drawn as opposed to just some sort of a treatment with standardly available types that anybody can get in any Word document.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's sort of keep moving. So Mallory, do you have any sort of rule of thumb thoughts on when you're designing for social media as opposed to other types of media? What are the things that you want to be keeping in mind?
Yeah, so I will say I'm not a graphic designer. So this is really speaking from the DIY perspective.
But you design a lot of graphics.
I design a lot of graphics, but that's why I use something like Canva that does a lot of the work for me, that has a lot of templates. Even on their blog, they actually have suggested type pairings. So if you search like Canva type pairings, you can find these fonts go well together. So I'll do stuff like that as a non-graphic designer person. I sometimes need a little help. Canva is also really handy in that they have templates for the different sizes for different social media platforms. So you've probably noticed if you go on like Instagram used to be all square, now you can post like vertical and horizontal photos and graphics. But the size of a graphic or a photo that goes on Instagram is generally a different size than what's going to look best on Facebook, or a Facebook event page is a different size than a regular Facebook post. So pretty much everywhere across the web, these are all like different dimensions, different sizes. But Canva has templates for almost every single thing you could think of, like even if you have an Etsy store or your YouTube cover banner or the YouTube, like the thumbnails for your actual videos, they have a template for that if you want to do that. So it makes it really easy to know exactly the dimensions that you need, and then they have a lot of different templates within those dimensions that you can work on and modify, which is a lot of times where I'll go as a starting place. Sometimes I'll work from scratch, but as a non-graphic designer, it's very helpful to have a template that then you can put your custom fonts or your specific brand colors into and your own images and work from there.
Right on. So, Kia, you design a lot of different types of graphics, but I'm trying to think. Not a lot of the stuff that we do is like specifically purposed for social media.
Not really, a little bit. Mostly, I guess our social media gal handles that.
Well, and she works with graphics that are based on stuff that you come up with, so she basically take a lot of those same graphics. But when you're creating a graphic, there's a lot of similar thought process that goes into it, whether it's for a billboard or a print ad or something that we know is going to run on a website somewhere. So what are some of the things that you keep in mind when you're trying to create something that's going to convey as much information as possible in a really short period of time?
Right. I pay a lot of attention to colors and fonts that are big, bold. I typically use sans serif fonts. I use pictures, good pictures, professional pictures, whether it's from an artist or some that our photographer takes. Yeah, so pretty much what Jeremy said earlier, colors. I stick with a certain color palette. I tend to like reds, purples, oranges, stuff that pop, yellows, golds, and big chunky fonts.
Actually, since I knew you were going to be on the panel,
Yeah.
I have a couple of examples. So I've got 3 examples of billboards that you've designed. And one of the things that I thought was relevant about these is that these billboards actually, I would say, have a lot in common with graphics that you would use for social media. In fact, they work pretty well for that purpose because Well, you explain it, you know what I'm talking
Yeah, this one is actually done by, because I do enlist some help from my community. This one is actually done by Ashley Thomas of Creative Vibe. She did this one, but it's pretty much in the same vein of what I do. But yeah, this one I think we've used on Facebook and
It got a lot of use, but it was on a billboard across the street
Right,
here, it was on digital billboards by the
Right.
highway.
yeah.
But one of the things that comes to my mind is that when it's a billboard, especially on a highway, you've got to design it for people that are speeding past it at 60 miles an hour.
Right.
And if it's something that's going to be on your Facebook or your Instagram, people are going to be scrolling through it on their phone really quick.
Right.
And you got to get the need of the information across super fast.
Right. Few words, big pictures, bright colors.
Like a couple of really key elements.
Exactly. No,
Can I,
it's
can I highlight just a couple of things on this too?
Please.
The thing that I think is so successful about this piece is that you have a really easy to read sans serif font, which is what you started with. It's so easy to read, you can read it from anywhere, it's clear, you understand the message. It has a beautiful use of that yellow color, so it has that defined color palette in it. And then the last piece that I wanted to say, in blue, the word blues, that's an example of a slab serif that I mentioned earlier. That's it.
I thought you were going to say how clever it is that the word blues is in blue.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you must be a design guy, because, I mean, who talks about yellow as beautiful? I'm not a design guy. So this is another example of a billboard. Did you do this one, or did Ashley?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so same basic concept. Strong graphic element, heavy logo,
Yeah.
basic elements, dates, website, you know.
Pretty much.
And again, this is something that could work really easily on social media. And here's one last example of this.
Yes.
So, how do you like the colors there, Justin?
I love it, that's such a good red. Such
It's a good red. It's a good. So you have to curate your colors very carefully. I mean, we're joking about it, but you're serious that how color affects you emotionally is something that you need to consider. See, I would never think of that. I'm just not that kind of guy. Which I guess is why I need a panel like this. Lee, so you're very patiently taking all this in. And any thoughts, not just on billboards or graphics, but when, and I know that you're not specifically a graphic designer. You're kind of a all-around marketing guy with a digital focus.
I've got the cheat code because typically the aesthetic is given to me after. I work with a lot of big bands, so they get a lot of their graphic design done. But I must always, without fail, will receive like 16 gigs worth of someone's retrospective album packaging, and with a note that's like, this needs to be a Facebook banner graphic. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like. So what I do is I'll break down to sort of the simple elements that Justin was talking about. What is the prominent color here? What is the primary typeface that they've used? Is there a logo mark? I just ran into this with a client. I was just handed so much content. So I have to go back to basics even to begin the idea of how am I going to design around this? And then I'm a sucker for limitations, so I like limited space. I think this just comes from one of my first jobs in music was creating AIM buddy icons. And that was like 24 pixels square. That's small. But that was like the killer piece of.
For people who don't know pixels, how large are you talking?
I mean, it's like this big. It's very small. And that was like the primary piece of music business real estate back in the day. We were like, fuck, we need to be there. These days it's sort of similar. Like I don't have to worry about the design side too much unless it's my stuff. And when it does come down to designing the graphics themselves, very simple stuff.
Now, when you said that you had to turn this, 16 gigabyte document into a Facebook banner graphic. So do you mean like the banner on the band's homepage that's gonna live there for weeks and weeks or months and months, and that's gonna be this one static image that everybody's gonna see when they go to their Facebook page?
Right, yeah, and luckily I'm not usually in charge of that stuff, because honestly, like, this stuff does keep me up at night. Graphic design in general. Sorry, I'm the worst person to be on this panel, because I'm kind of like getting nervous just thinking about all these graphics I gotta create.
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, but it's so weird because
Deep
like,
breaths.
I don't even have to do the designing, but even when it's handed to me, I'm like, it's gonna be
Well,
perfect.
let's just use that as an example.
Yeah.
So, all right, so it was for Foo Fighters, was
Right,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
yeah.
this was actually for Chris Cornell, rest in peace.
Okay, all right. But when you know that your assignment is to make something that's gonna be a Facebook homepage banner, and it's got
Yeah.
this one piece of real estate that's gonna be there, it's not one post that people are gonna flip past forever, it's gonna be this one thing. What were the most important things that you knew that it needed to incorporate?
Right, like I looked for sort of the textured graphics, stuff that I knew I could easily put typography on top of. That's pretty crucial, because if you're dealing with graphics of various sizes, sometimes it's hard to sneak a photo into there. Like I see some really nice like die cut photography that's made a part of this. But for me, sometimes I just need like a kind of a background image that I can then sit typography on top of. So looking for those sorts of assets, of which there was quite a lot of in this Chris Cornell retrospective, because they had this sort of ongoing watercolor texture type graphics, which was nice. And then singling out like the primary typography, the color schemes, his logo mark, and then just pulling those elements out and being like, all right, if I'm starting from the base of this, I have these elements.
Is it still on his Facebook page?
I think all of that stuff is there. I didn't do the social media graphics for that. I
Chris
built an
Cornell.
application, but yeah. But you can see a little bit of that stuff.
Oh, look at that cool graphic.
That's cool.
This one?
Yeah. So
Is that
that's
it?
a little
Is this
bit
the one we're
of
talking about?
aesthetic. Yeah. I didn't do that. I would have made that so much bigger. But you can see like,
What
obviously,
bigger?
they hired the text.
The words.
Yeah, but you see they were like, we gotta fit that whole skyline in there. All right, what do we got left for text? That area, you know. I didn't do that in my website. I actually pulled back. I used the white background, which I thought was a lot cleaner. And I put that mark in red. And I actually just used the forest texture as the background of a button. And I was like, this is as far as I'm willing to go, because I know how varied, in this case we were building a responsive website, how varied the situation was going to get. And we were actually building a quite text-heavy experience. And you can see they've given themselves this much real estate for that much text.
All right,
I
so
had a lot more
you didn't
text.
design this,
I
right?
did not design
Do you
that.
guys like it?
So I fully agree that the text is small, right? It's a little hard to read. What I love about this piece is that it gives you a clear aesthetic vision for the type of music you're going to listen to. And what I love about it is you have this really bold red that tells its own specific story. What I don't like about it is that it feels like there's a lot happening in one image, and a lot of times I think that's a thing that young designers do, is they try to put everything on top of everything, on top of everything, on top of everything. Let's put every color, let's put every font, let's put everything together. And this is actually still formally well designed, it just has a lot going on.
Mallory, what do you think?
As the non-graphic designer, I will say the one thing that I do feel qualified to notice is that for the cover photo, the big photo, it clearly like matches up with what they use as their icon, which is important. So most people, once they're actually following Chris Cornell on Facebook, they're probably not going to be seeing the big photo unless they actually go to this page. but they'll see the icon photo, so it's important that those two are consistent, even if they're not exactly the same, that they still have the same brand and the same feel to them.
Kia, what do you think?
So again, what Jeremy said, the font, I'm sorry, just, I'm so sorry. The font is so small, don't laugh at me. The font is so small and, but I don't know, the image is nice, you know? I'm drawn to the colors personally, but the words.
You artsy people in your colors, that's great.
Yeah.
All right, Lee, you did not design this, right?
I didn't, but
Okay.
also like, you're probably the first person ever to go directly to an artist's Facebook page, so that's another thing you have to question when you're working on these things. It's like, who's gonna see this? Because like, I probably wouldn't even put type on there, because it is just sort of a big graphic area
Yeah.
that's not necessarily seen very much because it's not a very highly trafficked page. And if Facebook has its way, you're not gonna have any traffic on that page.
All right,
You know what I'm saying?
okay. You didn't design this. Am I the only one here that thinks that that's an absolutely ridiculous image?
You mean the overall like vision
I
of
mean,
it?
like, I have
Like him
zero
on the trees.
understanding of why you have a multi-city, you know, cityscape. Like, there's Paris, there's New York, and I don't even know what else is in there.
It's,
So
a
this-
it's a retrospective
Of what?
of whatever you want it to be.
I only wanted it to be about Chris Cornell. I don't care about the Eiffel Tower.
Well, too bad.
It's like,
And why is there a forest next to it? What the hell's that got to do with
because
it?
he's from the Pacific Northwest.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
This is, you know, this is a good graphic for people that are really, really stoned.
Yeah.
It's too early yet. I'm not able to appreciate
It's a
this
video,
quite yet.
some of the deluxe, and it's like die
I
cut
don't
that
know,
way.
man. He's all hidden by the trees. But you've got trees juxtaposed with these high-rise buildings for no apparent reason.
Right, looks like your page.
So
But
he's
I'm not a graphics person. I don't know anything about
He's
this.
a cosmopolitan urban person who hangs with trees and
Yeah.
peeks out from trees.
Nice try.
I feel like this is important to remember that, like, as the non-graphic designer though, but what you're showing connects with your ideal audience. Because this is obviously a turn off for some people and a turn on for others, so I don't know Chris Cornell's music really.
It
so
was
I don't know
tricky,
what
like,
he's right
because
now.
it's a retrospective. This guy was in like 4 bands. They had to come up with an aesthetic that sort of met them all. So it was
But
very
Justin-
much about him.
Justin, you said that looking at this gives you a sense for what type of music you're going to experience if you listen to it. Really? Or is that just because you know Chris Cornell's music?
Well, so I said that without knowing Chris Cornell's music.
So what kind of music do you think it is?
I would assume that I can hear heavy guitar when I hear this music.
What about this image tells you that?
So the
Hair.
reason that I say that is that bold red color is a key guitar music tell. Also that
Okay,
texture
anybody
on
from your
top
playing
of
a
the
guitar
face.
band? Use red.
That texture on his face, it
Angst.
also is like an angsty vibe.
All right, I get that.
That's pretty
But
much
I only
it.
say that because I've heard his music.
Yeah, I haven't heard it.
As someone, I don't know that I really know any of Chris Cornell's music. I get like a earthy rocker vibe from this. That
Because
would
of
be
the
my
trees?
the trees, also just like his like long hair and facial like hair.
It's tricky though, because he passed away. So I think the aesthetic changes a little bit. It's a little bit more abstract, I think if it was
I'll buy that.
Chris Cornell greatest hits, yeah, there probably wouldn't be trees or cities. Like it'd be very different. But the rest of the packaging has more of these kind of watercolor images of his face because they show every era of his life. So I think there's a bigger story there with the full visual representation.
I want to move on, and in a second, I'm going to just pull up the Facebook page from the artist that you sent over earlier, because you said that's one you really liked, so we'll talk about that. But while we're looking at Facebook, so generally speaking, are there things to keep in mind for engaging with, so for creating graphics, for people to engage with on social media on a mobile device as opposed to on a desktop or a laptop? How do you, balance those two competing uses when you're trying to come up with, a unified graphics scheme?
So, well, it sounded like maybe you wanted to say something?
Lee?
Oh, what, because I moved my mic?
Yeah. That's a tell, that's a definite tell.
Well, I would just say that for me, there's really no difference, because most of these are going to go through the timelines themselves. So if you're creating content for desktop, odds are it's going to end up in mobile in some format. Either the application's going to decide what it looks like if it's the case of like a header image, or if it's a post, it's going to come through the way it comes through. So very seldomly these days do you find a graphic that's only for the desktop and not for the mobile. They're usually one graphic used for both places, and perhaps using a tool like Canva, or at least be able to show you what that one graphic might look like over this whole series of software and implementations.
Justin is nodding, but yes, you agree.
Yeah, fully agree. If you use that kind of billboard mentality that we talked about earlier, it should be readable and easy to see regardless of what platform you see it on, whether it be desktop or mobile.
Because if the type is going to be that small in an image that's of that dimensions, if you're looking at that on the phone, would you even be able to read that?
You might not.
No.
Is there anything different that you should be keeping in mind if you're creating something like now where you pointed out that they use the same photo in the banner as they do in the, what do you call that? Icon. There's a
Cover image.
cover image or avatar. Is that still a word that people use?
It works.
Oh, okay. So when you're creating something, your image that is going to be your profile picture, your icon, like on Instagram and Twitter, right? You've got, by all of your posts, it's got this teeny tiny little thing that if you're looking at your phone, it's like super small. It's like not even a centimeter large. How do you design something that's designed to be read so small?
So usually graphic designers, when they do a logo, they'll also do what's called a mark, right? That's okay. Which is sometimes it'll just be like the first letter of the logo, or sometimes it'll be a styled, drawn graphic. I've been working a lot with handmade businesses, and one of them that I was looking at recently is Knitting Bee. And so the designer drew a little bee. And so that would be used, would be the cute little bee drawing instead of the full Knitting Bee logo that says all the words. So I like that there's no words in the icon avatar photo, and I think generally you probably want to shy away from having a lot of words in any of those because they're going to be so small in those screens.
Cool. Okay, so this is, who is this artist now? Nether Friends?
So I wanted to show you guys this example because he traveled through New Orleans. I got to meet him very briefly when he was here. And I wanted to talk you through some of the things that I think he does really successfully. If you keep on scrolling down.
I'll just scroll, you talk, tell me when to stop.
So the artist's name is Nether Friends, and what I think he does really successfully is he posts pretty frequently on his Facebook page, kind of telling you about what he's doing and keeping you updated on what's happening in his life. The thing that I wanted to point out is that he does a really great job of getting professional photos taken of himself, as well as professional video, which I think is one of the key elements that I can't stress enough. Especially when you're your own band, you have to have beautiful photos of yourself and consistently have beautiful photos of yourself so that you can have the assets you need for your graphics. If you pause 1 second for me here.
Here?
Yep.
Okay.
The other thing that I appreciate about him is that he is kind of this genre bending artist. He kind of mixes elements of hip hop with singer-songwritery type stuff. And so he made this strategic decision that he was going to make the majority of his stuff himself. So he draws his own things. He used his own original illustrations. And so like he came out with this conceptual album where on all of the songs, it's the only lyrics of the songs is the word "a," and so he came out with multiple songs where he only says "a" as the lyrics, and he created this.
All right, that I have to hear.
He created this really simple "a" in real life, and it looks like he took a picture of it, and so it kind of stands out. And so, what I love about this guy is that
Sorry.
he's prolific in the way that he posts. He is being clever in the way that he creates graphics. They're simple, they're easy to produce. It's something that speaks to his brand and it tells his story. But the most important part that I want to keep continuing to reiterate is he's getting professional photos and sometimes videos done of himself so he can use it to promote himself regularly.
Professional photos.
That's the key.
All right.
I'm sorry, question. You said that he made that, the graphic, it's not a picture?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he made it on paper and then took a photo of it.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can zoom in on it.
It's like beads or string or?
Embroidery?
Oh, it is. It's embroidery, actually.
Okay.
A picture of embroidery, I'm sorry.
All
I
right.
thought it was Play-Doh initially.
Yeah, it's hard to tell when it's small, right? There you go. I mean, so if that was his avatar or whatever, it'd be almost impossible to figure out what it actually was. Okay, let's look at a few other examples since we're doing that now. All right. I'm going to go through a few that I pulled myself off of social media just yesterday. And we can just sort of talk about whether we think these are effective. And are they, so let me just get your feedback on these things. So this is one from Instagram. It's a Giving Tuesday post, but it's posted by a local nonprofit called the Vera Institute of Justice, which is a social justice advocacy group. And so what are your thoughts? Is this an effective ad for what their mission is? Or what they're trying to, or as a fundraising, does this work for you? What do you like about it? What do you don't like about it? Don't all jump at once.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't scroll past it. I would have to
Well, so-
investigate.
Well, so that's effective right there.
Yeah.
It's not entirely obvious to me what it is their message is from that image.
Right.
I mean, it's clearly emotional, it's moving, it
Yeah.
means something.
I'm
not sure what it means.
I suspect that they didn't want to clutter the actual image up with any type that would explain what it is that they're all about. But I'd imagine in the body of that copy, they probably framed it a little bit better. So they're going for grab your attention. They have established themselves, at least in the top right corner, as some sort of entity. They're using the donate now functionality of Instagram to good use, so the button is there.
Good point.
But I don't use a lot of photos that are this evocative in music business marketing, but I do tend to steer away from actually putting typography in my posts, hoping that the graphic does most of the work and framing what it is that I'm talking about in the actual copy.
Well, I noticed that it has 0 interactions. There's no likes, there's no shares,
Yeah,
there's
you didn't
there's
even
no
like
comments.
it. Brutal. Yeah. It's also a sponsored.
Keeping it real.
It's also a sponsored post, so with
Ah.
that comes a little bit of stigma, you know.
Indeed.
I think people just, no one's going to see this and see an ad, but it still is an ad, you know. It's not something you were necessarily following, so.
Well, do
so
you
much
guys
of
have
that
a general
goes-
feeling when you see the word sponsored on an Instagram post? Do you have an instinctive negative reaction?
I work in advertising, I do not.
Fair enough.
I fully support you guys clicking on ads.
I think it depends on, like, is the ad effective? And then if it's effective, then it doesn't matter that it's an ad. But if it's not effective, then the fact that it's an ad is more of like what we focus on. I think, I would agree that if the photo was on its own, it would probably be attention grabbing, but it's kind of confusing as laid out because it's a little hard to read where it says Giving Tuesday and the placement on her arm almost looks like a tattoo, which is kind of confusing.
So the whole thing, yeah, I agree. I agree with that entirely. Okay, let's keep on moving. Okay, here's one. This is an ad. Speaking of ads, it's from a CBD manufacturing company in Washington State. So it's a picture. It's a picture of product with a prop.
Yeah, I don't like the Tin Man. He looks weird.
Oh, it's a tin can.
Yeah, like I don't know who he's like.
But there's,
It's like,
Get it.
this is an ad for a Christmas ornament. I think it like overcomes the motion lotion. Maybe if it was like a cuter cartoon of a Tin Man putting lotion on. But I just see a cheesy Christmas tree ornament. I don't like that.
All right, for those listening at home, the comment was, it's confusing, I don't like it. And what is motion lotion? Oh, sorry.
25 people like it.
All right, here's one. Got a lot of interaction.
Clear.
So this is from Andrews Osborne, New Orleans-based artist. Looks like a poster that was designed for a larger use, but rendered small and, you know, seems, I don't know, what do you guys think? Is this attractive? Is it effective?
I want to highlight a couple things that I think are super awesome about this piece. The first is you have that clear logo mark. It looks like it was designed maybe by a professional designer, which is really awesome.
You mean the type treatment on his name?
Yep, the type treatment on Anders Osborne, yes. And then the secondary typeface where it has December 14th, December 15th, and then where it's Tipitina's and the address is super easy to read. It's really clear, you can read it really easily. Unfortunately, you can't read the text under it as easy. My hope is that on mobile, or if we saw it on screen, we would actually be able to read it a little bit better. But I think this overall is a really successful piece, and it gives you a feeling of what type of music you will hear, which is kind of the key. The other last piece I wanted to say, they only use 2 colors in there, and I didn't say this yet, but when we talk about color palettes, one of the easiest ways to have a good color palette is just to pick 2 colors to pair together. It makes it so much easier to do good design when you have less colors.
And this is a screenshot from a phone, so that would have rendered really small.
You wouldn't be able
So
to
it's
read
pretty
it.
tough to read. What do you think about having the graphic image next to basically 2 panels, one with a graphic image, one with type? How do you think that works?
I
side
think
by
it's
side?
successful.
Do you? It looks to me like it's an ad for a Halloween show, but it's actually in December. So
I would argue maybe his music always sounds like Halloween.
you know Anders. Okay. All right, moving right along. Okay, so here's another Giving Tuesday ad. This is from a local nonprofit, the Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans. So it's a photo with the Giving Tuesday logo slapped on top. So is this effective? Is this doing the job? I mean, look, they raised $650 out of, you know, almost half of their goal.
But the
yeah, I
word-
think in this case, the graphic itself has very little to do with it. It's that little piece of UI that Facebook built that just shows the amount of donations coming through. I mean, I guess people know what this is that they're giving money to, so they probably already know that going into it. I don't think it's the graphic that's convincing them to do it, and I question.
So you think they're appealing to a built-in audience?
Yeah, in this case, but that UI feature that Facebook does provide, showing where the donations currently fall, is really nice. And the context, 12 people donated, who's liking it, who's sharing it, all of that helps a lot.
Did somebody have a
it's a current
comment?
graphic.
Yeah, well, the heart, the braided heart looks like one of those Swedish Christmas ornaments.
Now, that's not their fault, that's the Giving Tuesday logo.
Yeah, but it's covering up the New Orleans music parade.
In other words,
Second line.
so there's, in your view, there's a flaw in the design.
Yeah, I would
Because
put
the
the-
graphic covers the photo.
Yeah, I would put the heart thing somewhere up in a corner. It's already in the Giving Tuesday, so
Yeah,
let the New Orleans Music and Culture Coalition speak for itself.
okay, let them speak for themselves. We do have a microphone here that maybe we could put in the middle so that people could use it if they want to comment, if we could. Okay, this is another Giving Tuesday ad. There was a lot of that yesterday. I'm not sure what to say about this graphic. Do you guys have any thoughts? Key, it looks like you wanted to say something.
I mean, yeah, I feel like if I saw something, I mean, obviously people are giving to it and it's affecting people, but I think, you know, the Urban Conservancy people know this. But if I saw something like this, I would probably be like, oh my goodness, there's so much happening.
Too busy, too confusing?
Yes.
Not like the same.
I don't, like, you know, when it's got multiple blocks like that in something that's like 2 inches wide on your screen, I don't know how they expect anybody to see any of those individual elements, or let alone, you know, get some sort of a composite meaning from that. It doesn't work for me. Well, clearly it worked for them because they made $1,400.
Back to what Justin was saying, I think just one of those photos, because they do look like good photos
Yeah.
in that block.
One big
Would do
photo
fine.
would have been enough, I think.
Well, so it sounds like, you know, they had so many things that they were trying to convey that they couldn't make them.
Well, this graphic was designed outside of the context of how it was going to be used. You know, someone said, we need these things on graphic, and here's the Giving Tuesday logo. Everybody's using it. And then they uploaded it, and that's how it ended up.
Perhaps it was designed by committee.
Oh, I don't think so. Even though that FYI kind of says that it was. Maybe.
Okay, all right, so here's one that I put up just because I like Samantha Fish. No, actually, I picked it because I thought it was an example of something specific. Do you guys know what I was trying to get at with this?
I mean, it's a great artist picture, it's bright, it's colorful, grabs your attention.
Yeah, and it's just a picture. It's just a picture of her.
Yeah.
And it so happens that it's got this really hot color scheme, hot color scheme, that's what I'm talking about. So this hot pink background with this really cool classic guitar that's this really cool color. You know, the black and white outfit that she's wearing totally contrasts with the colors in the background of the guitar. She's smiling, she's happy. You know, it's just a picture. But I thought that was a good example of how you can use a photo that maybe somebody shot on their phone to really good effect. And the context of this was that they were announcing that she signed a new record deal. And so it was really just a promotion to announce that. And so, in my opinion, I thought that was effective. But I also think she's a great artist.
She is.
Okay, here's one that this looks like it's, the image is kind of self-generated because it's a link from a Vimeo video. And in my mind, this is an example of all of the pitfalls that can happen when you use a link to generate your image that goes along with your post, because you don't have that much control over it, right? If you're posting a link that's going to have an image on it, and it's got all of these other things in there that I don't think read, and I don't know what they mean or what they say. Do you guys have any thoughts on the use of this type of content for a social media post?
Well, it has a pretty popular component, and that's the play button. That's probably more powerful than anything else on that page, because we all know what the fuck that means. It's like, I'm gonna do it, or I'm not gonna do it, I'm gonna scroll right past it. Obviously the ferns means it's a bunch of fake awards, it looks like, which is nice, the ivy. I think you do have some sort of creative control, at least Vimeo will give it to you, to swap out what this thumbnail will be. So they've chosen, probably within other contexts, to have this as the precedent. In bigger embed situations, it probably shows all those awards really nicely and really tempts you into clicking it, but they don't have this like dialed in fidelity as to choosing what's going to happen on each one. They're trying to do a lot with the copy, all caps up front, online premiere, but it's tough. If you don't know what this is, you probably wouldn't click on it. And perhaps there was something more interesting that caused all these awards to be won that they could have shown in the graphic. But they probably know who they're sending this out to. They're choosing their sponsorship. Were you served this? Ed? Were you served this, Ed?
Would I serve it?
Were you served it?
Oh,
Was it on your feed?
It just came up in my feed. I have
That's
no idea
weird.
why I
Yeah,
saw
that's
it. I don't
weird.
follow these people, I don't know why.
Fucked up. I mean, they're getting mad advertisement right now.
All right, let's just look at a couple more. Oh, look at that. All right, totally self-serving, but I thought that was a cool graphic. Okay, all right, this one. So this is a shout out to our good friend AF the Naysayer, who just goes by AF now, I guess. He teaches hip hop beat making here in one of our classrooms upstairs to teenagers 3 afternoons a week. So he's a friend of the foundation. This is an image. It looks like a really quickly designed flyer that he may have designed on his phone, maybe. But any thoughts that jump out at you? I thought this was a very clever graphic. Justin, what do you think?
I think what makes this a successful graphic to me is you have that bold picture that draws you in. One thing I didn't mention yet, based on some of our understandings of Facebook and Instagram, people really like to see people. You respond when you see someone's eyes looking back at you on an ad or in a post. It's a really successful way to get people to stop and look.
That's a really good point. So if there's going to have a person in the picture, it's helpful if they're looking at you.
Mm-hmm. It helps out, based on our research with engagement a lot. It increases engagement. The other piece that I love about this is it's really clear what you're supposed to read. It's not a lot of text. It follows that kind of billboard rule. Less words always works better. And then I wanted to point out they're kind of breaking that rule that I gave you earlier, which is use a limited color palette. What I think is successful about it and why I think it really works is they're using a color palette that everybody's really aware of, right? That kind of rainbow tells a story of international acceptance. This is for everybody, this is for anyone. And it's just beautifully put together. It's awesome.
And at the root of it is just a picture. It's just a picture of him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he looks like.
Yeah, clean typography, not trying to do too much.
And to me, that photo does not scream professionally shot. I mean, that looks like a picture that somebody might have taken on their phone.
That's possible. It
It's
doesn't
not
look
unprofessional.
unprofessional.
Really? I don't know.
I mean, this there.
It's a really good shot. It doesn't have like special set or special lighting or, it almost looks a little out of focus. It doesn't look like it's so, super high tech. I just think, that's a great example because he's an independent artist. He works with like virtually zero budget and I'm sure he made this himself.
This is going to come up in some of the content that I provided, but
Okay, and we're
also
about to get to that.
the graphic at the bottom allows him to pull off some of this typography stuff, So the photo in the back could be swapped for a different photo, and then the typography might still hold up. So it's kind of like a collage in that sense, that whereas the typography and the white text might fall apart on another image, that colorful background at the bottom sort of is the foundation for that typography to actually function, which is great. If you're trying to do this at scale, swap by for a bunch of photos.
Right on.
Just a comment on that photo. It might have been shot with anything, but someone controlled the depth of field nicely. You see how little the depth of field is, so the background is blurred out? You have to think about that. It's not going to show up in your automatic features on a camera. And the light is hitting his hair nicely.
Perfectly, yeah.
So
Yeah,
Someone
but it
was-
looks like natural sunlight, it doesn't look like.
Someone either got very lucky
manipulated
or they
light.
knew how to run the basics of a camera, so.
Okay.
And we have some questions concerning some things he said about the colors of it. But I'm here representing Bahia Bacchanal Caribbean Festival. So that means what I would produce would incorporate a lot of colors. Just incorporate all the different nationalities. But you said the most effective is 2. How on earth would I possibly even approach this?
So, okay. I feel like it's actually a really easy design problem because Caribbean has such a hyper-specific mental image. So like, to me, you kind of have that red, black, yellow, and green. No, you don't agree?
There's so many. You kind of gave me reggae vibes just now.
Okay.
Not so much Caribbean in totality.
Okay.
Let's start
Yeah.
So the way that I like to start before I do any design project is go to, let's say, Pinterest, for example, and I'll type in Caribbean flyer. And then I'll look at the examples that I have available to me, and that'll be the jumping off point to help me understand what type of fonts that I should pick and what type of colors I should pick. And I think that'll be a good starting point to help you decide. I think the 2-color rule, the reason I say that is because I think when you're not a professional designer, it's hard to pick colors that go together. For example, when we were looking at that Giving Tuesday, it had FYI on one of them. It had Urban Roots as the logo, and then it had FYI. And the way those colors went together, it literally was an assault on my eyes that like was very traumatic. And I think if you're not trained in design, you have to use either examples from other people or tools like Canva or Adobe Spark. I know you
So
love
as a
Canva. I
whole-
love Adobe Spark.
But so Canva's great for the actual, the graphic design, but for color choices as a non-designer, there's a tool called Coolors, I think is the name of it. It's COOLORS, I think. So basically what you can do is if you have your like 1 or 2 colors that you know are definite, but you want to find some extra complementary colors, you can throw the like hex codes, the like web design 6-digit codes in, lock them, and then basically keep hitting the space bar until you find other complementary colors that look nice with it. So that's really helpful for a non-designer.
That's me.
Quick story, I was redoing my backyard and I wanted to paint the outbuildings in Caribbean colors. So I literally Googled Caribbean colors because I wasn't sure what to do. And all these pictures came up, and the first one was this picture that was a picture of, you know, at the front of a house, really great colors, bright orange, turquoise, pale green, all the yellow, all, you know, used together.
Everybody
And
loves
that
that.
very afternoon, I drove past that house on Royal Street in the Marinade, Caribbean colors. So, yeah.
Actually, if you come up with a strong typographical design for the project or a strong logo, you could actually use them 1 color at a time. And just the breadth of the whole campaign would, of course, convey the whole Caribbean feel.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
All right, so Lee, you stepped over a few examples of things that,
We have one more question.
oh, I'm sorry.
I had a question. We were talking a lot about colors, but I'd like for y'all to comment on the use of a colored photo versus a black and white photo.
All right, in case people at home can't hear, the question was on the use of a color photo versus black and white photo.
I've never used a color photo in my life.
You've never used a color
It's
photo?
terrifying. There's just no way. It's never going to work.
I don't agree at all.
Opinion much? Okay. So what do you think, guys? Color photos? No? Yes?
Oh, yeah.
You have to
Depends
use a
on your
color
brand.
photo.
I would say it fully depends on what is the message you're trying to convey. My caveat being, the photo has to tell the story that you want it to tell, right? And so like, before you even take the photo, if I'm a rock person, it looks like I want to have red and black and white in the photo, right? We kind of established that through some of the examples we've seen today. Everybody, if you're rock, it's red, black, and white. So if my photo has like a...
Sorry, Pink, you're out.
Well, let's say my photo has like a light blue, a soft light blue in the background. Maybe I need to make it black and white for it to work for my purposes. But if you were kind of strategic on the front end and got photos that told the story in an important way, you should be able to use that colored photo.
I think this is also why it's really good to have like a clear brand guidelines overall, right? Because I personally, for my own stuff, never use black and white, but I love other brands that use only black and white. But that works for them, but not for me.
Can you go back and forth, or do you have to be married to one?
I think it depends on your brand. It has to be intentional. It can't just be haphazard.
Should it reflect the song that it's promoting?
I would actually push you to try to find consistency. I think trying to switch it up and going back and forth for non-trained designers ends up looking mishmash and not put together. I wanna give Mallory the most incredible accolades because she has a color palette that's like embedded in her branding. And so like she, for example, is really about cobalt blue, hot pink, and turquoise and yellow.
I actually killed off the yellow.
Oh, you killed the yellow? Sorry. But those three colors, she kind of consistently works into everything that she does. And so when she takes a photo, when she comes to present, whenever she gets her photos done, it's like, oh, I have my hot pink blazer that I'm gonna wear in the pictures. I got my hot pink socks. I got my bright blue blazer. I'm gonna take a picture in that, you know? So like, at the end of the day, because she's made these kind of strategic branding decisions on the front end, before she even does the photo shoot, you very clearly know that you're gonna get out what you need as the end result.
All right, Mallory sent over a bunch of examples that we're going to look at in just a second, but Lee, these are a couple that you sent, so can you just really quickly just say why you sent this picture?
Yes.
And what you wanted us to take away from it?
Well, obviously, we're not the Foo Fighters, and we don't have graphic designers doing show posters for us, but I recently worked at Songkick, which is like a live music product, and what I noticed is a lot of artists I miss this like opportunity to contextualize shows that are about to occur, shows that have just occurred, and shows that have occurred in the past. I just think they're really awesome moments to actually make a post. And I've seen a lot of independent artists do this well. Basically, they'll create a post right before the show is going to happen, like the Foos do, and say, are you ready? You know, you can just snap a photo of something that's in the town you're about to play or in the place that you're about to play. And then of course a nice little thank you post after the fact. But then I've taken it to the next level, which is creating a lot of scalable content for my clients that actually reflect on what's occurred in the past. Because for me, like the Foo Fighters playing the show, that story doesn't disappear after the show happens. It's actually something we can tap into later on. So we'll build a lot of this kind of like time hop type content that just a year later we'll just be like, hey, Enterprise Center, remember that? You know? And it's like a free post for us. And at that point we'll probably have a little bit of photography.
So I follow a lot of bands on the Instagram, and they post stuff like, yeah, we're playing sold out show tonight, can't wait, or that was an amazing show, thank you so much, but it's pictures of them. Like this image to me, I cannot make out what it is.
Right. Well, this is great. I also like that they've contextualized who actually designed the poster, which is nice. And of course the venue itself, because those two spots will also sort of share this further. But yeah, this is a show poster, so within the context of a rock show, I think most of these fans understand what's happening. But it's more like, there's this, I talk a lot of my work about intimacy between fans and the artists that they follow. A live show and your connection to fans within a live experience is probably one of the most intimate moments you can have at scale. And it's the same reason why when an artist is on stage, they'll shout out the city that they're in. It sort of grounds them in the moment. This is why I'm here, this is where I am. This is how you can do that on social media, both before and after, and then most importantly, I think, in the future, because it's like a freebie.
Again, I would say that my personal preference in this type of a use, which I agree with is an important use, I want to see a picture of the band backstage.
Right.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to know that they're there, they're on site,
Yeah.
they're tuning up,
I
they're
think
ready.
there's also something to be said about permanent content and temporary content. Instagram has created the new format and the story, so a lot of timelines are actually underused now because these sort of backstage temporary moments are then put into that format. So the more permanent format, something as timeless as a rock poster, is probably a safer bet.
Maybe.
There's probably things that happen backstage yet.
But I'm too old to understand a story. All right, I'm just going to flip past some of these.
Oh man, that was so good.
All right, so what did you want us to take away from this one?
I mean, this is what I wake up to every morning. This Instagram account is just amazing. My polar bear. I mean, everyone should just follow it. But I mean, if you have a pet, abuse it because it works for social media. Like, just put that on everything. Make that your album cover. Make it your whole presence online. It'll probably kick off pretty nicely.
And what did you want us to take away
Wait,
from this one?
go back to, because I think the Smashing Pumpkins one is really important,
Okay.
particularly with this Caribbean festival. I love, Smashing Pumpkins have a lot of photography. There's color photography, there's some videos there, but what they've done to make this consistent is simply dropping it onto a background image. And that's one of the things that you could achieve is just coming up with like a texture and then just dropping it on top, because somehow it still elicits this professional feeling. And that's one of the easiest ways to create content at scale. Because not only is it a photo, but a little bit of that aesthetic that's in the background is very Smashing Pumpkin specific.
So I don't understand this because I don't understand, is each square an image that you can click on or a video that you can click on?
Yeah, some of them are videos and some of them are images, so this is timeline view.
Okay, so I don't know how they made that. Is there a tool to be able to have your images come up as a grid like that?
Well, that's just on Instagram, that's one of the viewing options of someone's profile.
All right. I'm clearly too old for this panel. Okay. All right, and this was the last one you sent. You wanted us to take something away from this?
Well, I just love that I couldn't find any ugly photos, but then I got one from my past work pretty quickly. I mean, it's just gore, but they're pretty much known for that. They're doing their best by just putting a black bar there so the typography doesn't get lost. You can tell, like, there's a white shirt there, so the T, the R, and the E in the end probably would have been lost. They didn't put that bar across, but I mean, I'm looking at a sad photo. I'm looking at some pretty boring text. Yeah.
So this one doesn't work for you?
It doesn't work for me, but man, I tried to change things. They didn't learn.
All right. Lessons learned. Okay, Mallory, so.
Oh, now you're all gonna like rip my own DIY graphics apart.
No, we're gonna not sing your praises here. Okay, so is this your logo?
So that's my podcast cover art that I created entirely in Canva.
Now, I think all of the images you sent are all done in Canva.
Yeah, so
right?
all the images that I sent here, I did in Canva. I don't always only use Canva, but the ones that I sent here are. So the background is actually like a background that I found in one of the Canva templates that I just changed all the colors on it. And then if you have so you can do almost everything for free on Canva, but basically if you pay, I think it's like $10 to $12 a month. The premium version lets you like create your own custom templates where it makes it easier to kind of copy them over, and you can upload your own fonts. So these fonts are free fonts that exist, but I had to upload them to Canva because they don't automatically exist there. There's plenty of fonts that already are there. But I don't remember the name of this font, but it's basically, it's all the same font, but it's a couple different styles or parts of the font family. I'm not a graphic designer, so I don't know what that's called. But you can see, like, I use like the two different versions of the font for the badass and the creative.
Okay, so just to reiterate here for folks that may not be familiar with it, so Canva, C-A-N-V-A,
Yes.
is an app.
So they have, I usually use the desktop, like on your browser, on your desktop computer. I usually use that. They do have an iPhone or like a phone app. I found it a little hard to try to design stuff in the phone app. The only thing that I've used the phone app for is for Instagram covers, for Instagram stories. Like if you've ever noticed, like on Instagram, and people have Instagram stories, and they have cute little pictures at the ones that they have pinned at the top of their Instagram, and they're all like on brand. I've used the Canva app on my phone to create my covers for those.
So yes, there is an online, desktop version, but I was not familiar with Canva until you told me about it. And so I went to the App Store on my phone and put in graphic design apps. Lo and behold, there were dozens of them, and I downloaded a few. The only one that I've tried to use was Canva, and I was astounded at how incredibly easy it was. You had, a couple, templates to choose from. Pick one, swap out some type with whatever you wanted to say. Pick a JPEG from your photos to be the background. Boom, you're done. Like Instagram ready, right there. It literally took 30 seconds to make a really cool flyer for the band. So thank you for turning us on to Canva. Okay, so this is a flyer that I gather you made using the same program.
Yeah, so I did a workshop back in the spring at my mom's business, and this was like super quick and dirty because I was being really lazy about it. So I just searched in their template store, basically it's free templates, but I searched in the template area for flyers, and I looked around until I found one that I liked, and then I changed all the text, and there you have it.
Super easy. All right, what was this one?
So this is the template that I created for my social media graphics for each podcast episode. So if you were to go on my podcast website or my Instagram for this, which is Badass Creatives, so you would see like every time I have a new episode, I use the photo of whoever the person I'm interviewing or whatever the theme of that is, and then I change out the text. I also have a color palette that I choose from, so I have maybe like 5 to 6 colors that I usually alternate between. So this is like this blue overlay that's got a little bit of a transparency on it, so you can kind of see the picture behind it. Some of them would have like orange or lime green or purple, depending, because I don't want it to be the same color back to back for every episode. I want to break it up.
And it's a cool picture.
I cannot take, that's professional photography though, just to say.
Right, well, but a good picture always helps. Okay, this looks like a really easy to design flyer, but it's also quick and to the point and seems pretty effective.
Yeah, so this is, like I was saying, if you use YouTube or any sort of like video platform, if you want to upload your own custom thumbnails, that's basically what this is. I was doing this for videos for Skillshare, which is an online learning platform. So I used the YouTube template to make the video thumbnail. And so this was like the cover art for a video course I was doing.
Right on. Okay, here's flyer. Speaking of your color template.
Yeah, I feel like this is like lots of colors happening, but this is pretty much an existing template for a flyer that I found. This is a workshop I did last night, and then I'm doing one at Pensacola next week. So because it was called Embrace Your Weird, so I felt free to go a little bit more colorful, like beyond the 2-color palette. I luckily already had great professional photos done that magically have the same color palette as this.
Coincidence?
Coincidence, but not.
Planned decision.
Yeah, so if you searched in Canva, you could probably find, if you dug around, you could probably find the actual template, but the template didn't have the image. So basically what I did is I took the template and then I added one of their little photo shapes, which was this triangle, and then I dropped my photo into it, which coordinated with the rest of it.
All right, let's see. Okay, Pinterest. I have a question.
Yes.
Is Pinterest still a thing? Do people use it?
I'm obsessed.
Oh, yeah.
I speak on Pinterest
I
all the
thought everybody
time.
on Instagram.
But here's the trick. Pinterest is a search engine.
Right.
So Pinterest is, I don't think of Pinterest as social media. I think of Pinterest like visual Google search.
Okay.
More like visual porn.
Wait, before we
Sorry, what was
talking
I
about?
said it's more like visual porn. You get addicted. You could sit there for hours and not know that you have been on Pinterest for hours. And absolutely anything that can cross your mind, you can put in the search engine, and there's something for it.
That's something to look forward to.
Oh, I'm telling you, hours and hours you will sit there.
Okay.
The piece I wanted to make sure everybody saw that I think is really important wanted to say about Mallory's work is that it's all DIY, right? But she picked this color palette that it goes through. When you look at just about everything that we saw, it's all in that same 3 or 4 colors, and so it all looks cohesive, and that's smart and good use of the tools. It's
Well, here you go.
Makes it
Here's
very
is that
accessible.
color palette, A, B.
Yeah. Yeah, and those were for different projects, but I do have a consistent color palette. I think that's back to the whole brand thing especially as like an independent artist or band or anything. Like, you'll never see anywhere on my website, any of my social media, as well as on my human body, like I don't wear earth tones. They'll never be brown or tan unless it just happens to be in a photograph.
No, I usually wear.
Lots of like color and very specific palettes of color.
Well, that is super, that's mindful living right there. Photo, is that stock art?
That's totally stock art, yeah.
Okay.
I found it, so Pixabay is really great for beautiful free stock art. Pixabay.com.
All right, so we should probably just really quickly explain what we mean by stock art. Does anybody not know what that means? It means photography or images that you can use or that you can buy the rights to use it. So you're saying it's free stock art. So
Yes.
usually photographs and things are copyrighted, and if you use somebody else's image in your ad, you could be in big doo-doo, so it's a no-no. So when we do stuff, we only use pictures that we own, and you should do the same, unless you're using something where you can properly license it under the right terms. But there were free stock art
Yes.
sites. What was
Yeah.
that one called? Pixabay?
Pixabay is, I'm pretty sure where I got that one from. Canva has some free stock art and then paid stock art inside of it that you can use. But you can also upload either your own photos or photos that you have rights and permissions to use. So whenever I need photos that I haven't taken myself, I usually go to Pixabay to find stuff like paintbrushes or whatever.
All right, so that's the last of those examples. Okay, last thing I wanted to do was talk about Turn Audio. So, so now is the portion where we talk about the different platforms that you use to create. So we've already talked extensively about Canva. Justin, are there any particular platforms that you use for creating graphics?
Yeah, so if you have the interest in learning the professional software, there's always, that's the way I'm sitting, sorry about that. The kind of professional go-to for graphic design is the Adobe Creative Suite. They have the programs Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign that
How much does that
primarily
cost?
people use. It's a monthly fee of, I don't know how much it is, maybe $50 a month to get access to those 3 programs. The piece that's relevant to you guys that they just released for $9-ish a month, they have something called, gosh, I'm blanking on it, Adobe Spark. It's very similar to Canva. I actually personally like it a little bit better than Canva because their interface is intuitive enough to go, like you can design something in there and they have a button you can press and you can change the layout very quickly. And so if you want to kind of quickly remix things that you've already created, you can do it literally at the click of a button. They do all of it for you within the app. I think it's $9 a month, and so that's like kind of the Canva alternative that I would recommend.
What was it called again?
It's called Adobe Spark. And just to clarify, we actually use Canva at my workplace as well. There are non-designers sometimes need to be able to quickly produce something, and I have a $12 Canva account that people not on my team use that's really successful, so I highly recommend Canva as well.
And Kia, when you're designing stuff, what platforms or programs do you use?
I specifically use Photoshop or Creative Suite, but we'll have to look into Canva and oops. Okay, but yeah, I use Photoshop and Illustrator and Design just because it's
like the professional standard.
Yeah.
But there's like sort of a knockoff that's free, right?
There is a knockoff, but what's it called, Giphy? No. There's a.
So I also, when I'm not using Canva sometimes for other things, I use Pixelmator, which is Mac specific, but it's like a much cheaper, somewhat simpler version of Photoshop.
Can you spell that?
Pixelmator, so Pixelmator.
Yeah, pretty sweet for me.
What is it? GNU or GIMP?
GIMP.
That's the free Photoshop
It's
knockoff.
free and I tried it. It crashed. I would either stick with.
Get what you pay for. So.
You get what you pay for. So, but yeah, you know, I would stick with what they've suggested or Creative Suite if you're able to acquire that.
All right. So let's talk about Turn.
No.
No.
Let's talk about design tools.
Let's talk about design.
We're not done.
All right. Go ahead.
There's only one design tool as far as I'm concerned. It's Figma.
Figma.
Yes. And it's
FIGMA.
FIGMA. It's the new hot thing. It's very simple to use. Very smart.
Is it free?
It's browser based. It's free for individuals. I have no idea how they do not charge me for this piece of software, considering what I do on it. It's mostly for teams and collaborations, but if you're doing simple graphics, it will not do the things that Canva can do. It doesn't have templates. So this is if you want to do a little bit of designing, but mostly just layered-based designing, putting an image into place, putting some typography on top of it. It's quite simple for that. But I've been using it for all of my work. With a little bit of Photoshop when I do need to get some fidelity into the design. But for basic, like, compositing, putting some aspects of design together, it's perfect for that.
Do you ever use it on your phone or only on your laptop?
Well, the cool thing about Figma is it's in the browser, so it is everywhere that you are, but I never use it on my phone per se, but I do use it on my desktop computer, my laptop computer, quite a bit. Yeah, I wish I could actually show you guys a tutorial of it, but it's really awesome. I talked to them today. They're super smart. But it's just, yeah, a design tool.
You can get it on your phone too, like Canva.
Oh, wow.
All right, here you go.
It's 3 out of 5.
Okay, Figma.
Yeah,
There you
it's
have it.
nice, especially if you're a product person. It's pretty tight.
Okay. All right.
Also,
Nick.
it does. I'm not gonna say it. That's gonna get way too nerdy. Let's keep going.
Yes. All right. Well, how about Turn? You want to tell us about Turn?
Yeah, Turn.
What was your thought process with this? What is it? What's it for? How'd you do it?
Yeah, Turn. So, one of the interesting things about social media and artists is none of the social media platforms have an audio upload button, but all of them have a video upload button. So the purpose of Turn is pretty simple. It's to turn an audio file into a video. And the way it does that is it just expects you to provide 3 things. Your artwork image, a background color that you choose, and your audio file. And it basically just mashes those together. You can click on your example to create a video.
Oh, my favorite.
It's like this. That's it, and it just turns. So the thought is, when we pass it through social media, all the posts are muted now, but at least it has some movement to it. And I think the idea of a rotating circle is just very built into the fabric of music listening. So if someone does feel inclined, they could quickly unmute it and hear the content. But yeah.
So I made this on my phone. It didn't take quite 30 seconds.
Right, yes, it's very fast.
And the only thing that confused me was that it asked for a CMYK code.
Right, and I've
I
actually...
was like, I'm Googling CMYK. What? What is it? Oh, that's a color. I have to come up with a number. So there's a number that goes with this color, but I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, I've actually evolved the app to now pick the color from the prominent colors of the photo that you upload.
Oh, that's
so it'll at least pick a default, though it wouldn't have picked that blue, because the blue wasn't part of your original image. Yeah.
But it's a great contrast with the red, don't you think?
It's a great, I mean, it's one of the better turned videos, obviously.
There you have it.
Definitely see it.
That's why I'm here,
Okay.
to celebrate your cocktail.
Okay, guys, what questions do you have? Could you please, can I tell you, please use the mic? We have people listening in at home who wouldn't be able to hear you.
Because I want to avoid as much trouble as possible, you were talking about what could happen if you use somebody's photos that have been copyrighted. So my question is, when I look at a photo, is there a website that I could check? Is there some source that will tell me this is protected or not protected? Because I'm in the forest here, and I need to know where I'm going.
I would just assume that unless you know the photographer or receive permission, that somebody owns the copyright.
Or, well, so the flip side of that is, if you Google such and such, and use whatever image you find in that Google search, you're probably not on safe ground.
Yeah, I think Google Images does attempt to say if it's copyright or not, so there should be a little attribution. It's gonna be, chaos in there. But if you do find something that you do
Well,
like,
there are other ways though, right?
you should be able to see them.
There is wikimedia.com. It's a Wikipedia resource that has images that you can use, and it has the attribution rules. Attribution rules are the requirements that you have to follow in order to use said photo. So it might be saying the name of the person that took the photo. Sometimes they don't. They're like, whatever, you can use this however you like. If you Google public domain photography, those images that you find on that search, those you usually can use. There are a whole bunch of websites that are kind of dedicated to that. And then the last thing that I would recommend Googling, and Mallory, you might know better than me, but it's
Creative
probably
Commons.
just
Creative
freestyle.
Commons.
Yeah,
That's
can one
it.
of you explain in a sentence or less what is Creative Commons?
Yeah, so Creative Commons is basically like a worldwide way to like license, and it's not just for photos, I think it's even for like music and video and pretty much any kind of artwork. But it's a way to say, yeah, I'm okay with other people using this as long as they follow XYZ rules. So if you go to like Creative Commons, I think it's .org, you can see the actual list of all that stuff.
But it's a voluntary opt-in thing, there's nothing
Yeah.
legal about it.
Yeah, but at least it's you see that the person has said, I allow you to use the photos under these restrictions.
Yeah. I always am of the mindset, and I know that we try to be economical, we try to like make the best decisions with our pocketbooks, but like going to a stock site and just purchasing something for $5 to $10 is usually my recommendation. On Canva, it's only $1, usually the things that you purchase. I recommend, when you can, just paying for it. Now you're not gonna get like that beautiful picture of a Mardi Gras Indian from a stock site. That's not gonna be there, unfortunately. You might need to have somebody draw that for you or something, but
Most
Or you
of those
can take your
pictures
own
are, so you're
photos
saying,
too.
the ones that I take on Mardi Gras Day or Super Sunday or whatever day of the Mardi Gras Indian, is that picture, that suit, is that protected?
that's tricky. I would say photos in general are complicated, right? Because that person did not give you permission to use their photo in any way that you like. They kind of let you take that photo under the impression that, oh, I might post this on my personal Facebook, I might post this on my personal Instagram, but like, I'm not gonna try to sell something with that person's face. And so I would assume that like, in order to use that picture, you probably have to get express permission from that individual.
Yeah, we definitely have photo agreements and whatnot for our photos, and our photographer here, Eric, takes a good bit of those photos. Or I'll take them with our little camera. I'm not a professional, but
Right.
you know.
So
and
just because they hit the street doesn't give me the,
No.
okay.
Well, but it's an extremely complicated issue, because it is possible to have copyright jurisdiction over one's own likeness. However, if you are displaying, say, a Mardi Gras Indian suit
Right.
in the street on Mardi Gras Day or at Super Sunday, you have zero expectation of privacy, and you know that there are gonna be hundreds of people taking your picture, so it's possible that you are by default granting publicity rights
There you go.
for that type of thing. However, there were multiple issues, as you were saying. If you're using that image for artistic, creative, or interpretive purposes, or educational purposes, that's one thing. If you're
Right.
using it for commercial purposes, that's something else entirely. So you gotta be careful. Now, Mallory, you were talking about a free stock photo site as well. What was that site called?
So Pixabay, it's not the only one, but Pixabay is one of the ones that I use, that they have a ton of free stock photos. They'll all say the different, the like Creative Commons type copyright, like what people, usually those people that have uploaded their photos to Pixabay, you don't even have to credit them back, but you can like donate for like a cup of coffee's worth of money if you want to support the site. But pretty much all the photos on that site you can download and use as you want to, because people have just contributed to it.
Yeah, there's various ones. Unsplash is another.
Okay.
If you search free stock photography, the 3 best ones should
And it
come
seems
up.
like stock photos have come down in price a lot in the past couple of decades.
Yes.
When I used to write an article and then I'd be like, oh, I don't have a picture of the town square of the town that I'm talking about, whatever. I mean, you used to have to pay $50, $100, $200 for a stock photo, and I didn't realize stock photos could be bought for $10 now on many sites.
And so one of the other things, and we've run into this problem ourselves, is that sometimes we'll be pressed for time, or lazy, or both, and we will grab an image that we'll put on our website that we got from a Google search and get busted for it. And there are ways to know whether you're on safe ground with that image, because a lot of images that are online today have all of the creative authorship and rights information embedded in the metadata. So if you download a picture from the web, somebody who knows more about this than me should explain what this is about, but you can then open that image
Yeah.
and look at the metadata and see who owns it and get permission to use it, right? I don't know how one does that, do you? Oh, okay, well, we're useless on that. You right click on the image?
Or if you click on it, usually it's right at the bottom.
Okay, so,
I wanted to mention there are a whole bunch of really awesome stock sites that I think you guys could use. The one that we use at FSC is called Shutterstock.com. It's a pretty good resource. I think we pay $29 a month and we get 10 photos a month. That's what we're paying for. And so that ends up being really useful for us because we write like a lot of blog posts and we just need a random photo like you were kind of mentioning. And so for $29 a month, we get 10 photos that we can kind of quickly
with
download.
unlimited rights, so you could use it for an ad campaign, whatever?
Yep, you can use it for whatever you like. And the other thing that's awesome about it, if you do have access to the Adobe Suite, they have graphic design and illustration as well that you can download straight from the site. And occasionally, when we find ourselves in the pinch, we use that same stuff too.
Okay, what other questions do you guys have? Please use microphone.
This is probably its own seminar, but I'm looking at the Jamaican Meat Breakfast Club logo and some other really nice, strong logos. And if you could speak to the design of that logo, how does somebody who is not a professional and doesn't have a lot of money, I know, I've been in those seminars like on and on, what do we represent? But if you could just, what's the process? And how does the non-professional go about doing it?
Well, okay, so since you mentioned Jamaican Meat Breakfast Club, which is my band, so we were a band, we needed a logo. And one morning, I was walking on the levee, and in the ground, in front of me, was a red striped bottle cap in the dirt.
Red stripe.
And I was like, that's our logo. And I knew perfectly well that we were completely violating every copyright rule that there is. And I'm just hoping that we get sued. Because that's going to be invaluable publicity.
Absolutely.
So we totally stole it, we purposely made it look like a bottle cap, and we absolutely made it as blatant as we possibly could. strictly because we're a reggae band and it's Jamaican.
Okay, but who did it? How did you get it into that format?
There's Diana Thornton is a local designer. She has a company called Crescent Services, I believe it's called, and she does a lot of album artwork. And we used her to do our album design, and I said, make me a knockoff of this image and make it look like a bottle cap. And somehow she did it. That was basically it, but we totally stole it. I mean, straight up.
Yeah, a lot of people use those sites like, I think it's like 99 Designs or Fiverr. If they're like, I would personally, you know, like you get what you pay for when it comes to graphic design, but if you're super on a budget, you could try to use some of those types of sites. Because there's probably people on the other side of the world that are the graphic designers that don't require the same prices that people here do.
But find a graphic designer to do that project.
Yeah, so I think there's some things that are worth paying for, and your logo is something that you're gonna have to live with for, let's say, 5 years, right? And so, at minimum 5 years. And so, if you
sometimes 50 years.
Yeah, if you do it right, you can keep it forever. If you do it wrong, you probably want to change it in 5 years. And like, I think some things are worth paying for, but as Mallory said, that website, Fiverr especially, if you're on a budget and you've got $25, pay the $25 and just let somebody else do it.
Unless you've got super great graphic design skills,
Yeah,
which I for one
mine
have
was
none.
$60, and the girl was in Bulgaria, but her English was perfect. And I told her what I wanted. Please don't put a fleur-de-lis on anything else in this area. And it's
In the short term, it probably just helps to attempt to understand what you like about people's logos and at least like pull together a mood board if the opportunity comes up where you're going to hire someone to actually do it. Just having a source of information, attempting to understand what you like about something. Is it just clean? Is it simple? What's evocative about it? And then if you put all of those on a board, you might actually see the simple path you can take to try and emulate that to some degree.
But logo design is a whole art and science unto itself. Separate from graphic design, I mean, because you're attempting to incorporate a whole mission, a whole message, everything. And advertising agencies charge big, big bucks for logo design. Use the mic, Clarence. Go ahead.
What is your opinion and recommendations on using Facebook versus Twitter versus Instagram to promote an event or an art show or music show? I find that there's so much out there and people are pulled in 1,000 directions that a lot of times I hear about great events that I never saw until after the fact. What would you recommend for people to get the word out? It just seems like there's so much and people don't hear about a lot, even though you spend money and time and you post something, you send out emails, it's on these sites, but you find out after the fact, or I'll go to an event and hardly anybody's there. It's like, well, did anybody know about this? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
My first question is always, who's your audience? Like, who's your client, who's your customer? I think in a perfect world, we would all have the money that like Coca-Cola or some huge brand does, and we could be on all of the places and do them all perfectly. But I know that most of us probably in this room are either doing it by ourselves or doing it with very small teams and don't have all of the millions of hours in a day that a huge team of people does. So think about where your people are, because different audiences are gonna be more predominantly in different places. And then also you have to think about like, what are you good at? Like if you know that you're gonna be terrible at Twitter or Instagram or whatever, it's better to just not show up there than just show up a sloppy mess. So I think Facebook events can be really, really good because that's where I think a lot of people go to for events specifically. Eventbrite can be really good as well, depending on the type of event that you're throwing. I've done events where I've like sold tickets through Eventbrite, but I've had people actually find me through Eventbrite itself. and Eventbrite will link in directly with Facebook, like you can cross-publish it, people can buy tickets to your show or whatever from Facebook, but it still goes through the payment processor of Eventbrite.
Eventbrite in particular, there's lots of sites that do the same thing, but they're particularly effective.
Yeah.
Because we use it as well, and almost all the traffic that we get comes from the Eventbrite search, not from our website.
Yeah, and I would say too, don't forget about cultivating your own list of people.
That's exactly what I was
Like,
gonna say.
because y'all remember MySpace, right? I know that that's technically still a thing, but like, you remember when MySpace was the Facebook, and it's not anymore. So one day Facebook might not be Facebook, but you can always have your own website, you can always have your own list of people, whether that's getting people's phone numbers and you do like text message pushes if that's right for your audience, or you do email newsletters to let people know when you have shows coming up, but at least you have control over who your people are and you can reach out to them directly.
For a very short time, well, not a short time, for a long time I threw parties in the city, and the very first party that I did, it was a free party via Eventbrite. In order to get in for free, you had to provide your email list, and this was the beginning of my first email list. And so every party after that,
You had to provide your email list?
I'm sorry, you had to provide your email address to get into the party. I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's a funny slip. From that first party, I got, let's say 50 people signed up, 50 people came, and then the next time 50 different people came. And it's like you're continuing to grow this list, and then now I have people that are interested and engaged in the type of events that I was throwing. At the end, I had a list almost at 10,000. And so then I don't have to like do any advertising, because I can just email those 10,000 people via MailChimp and let them know that I have an event going on.
Do you find that people read email?
Yes and no. I would say marketing is important to have multiple touches. And so my best recommendation would always be Facebook event is a really good source. Eventbrite is a really good source. Email is a really good source. And then the fourth piece that I would add in is, are you actually text messaging people and letting them know? Because you think about, like, if you're throwing your own party at your house, you're not going to make a Facebook event and expect everybody to show up, because not everybody's going to check Facebook. Some people will, but not everybody. I personally, if I'm doing something, I might make a Facebook event, but if I want 10 friends to come do something, I'm just going to text them.
All right, on that, will you text them as a group or individually?
Individually.
Important distinction. No, seriously, did you ever get a text that's gone to like 100 people? And you're like,
But there's ways to do it. There's ways to do it. Personalization and scale.
Personalization is important.
You can build it. Trust me.
Okay, so, all right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So my question is slightly twofold. So for example, the sync up image has certain elements in it. Are you ever using elements that are in the sync up image as a hashtag? For example, are you using those colors? Or are you going to use Louisiana or OZ to sort of promote and get the word out, I guess, to sort of create a buzz about your image?
All right, well, that's a good question. So this particular logo was professionally designed. And so it was actually designed by Tom Verisco, whose company Tom Verisco Designs did the Jazz Fest logo 50 years ago. Yeah, not quite 50 years ago, that one. So he also designed this, and it came not just, so he did both the type treatment as well as the background graphic. And the background graphic was specific to New Orleans with the wrought iron imagery.
Tom was my design professor at Loyola.
He's pretty good. We have different versions of this same graphic where we have our hashtag, which I think is SyncUpNOLA, that we slap right in the middle of the graphic, that we leave on the screen in hopes that people are going to be sitting here tweeting about the event going on, and they'll use our hashtag. It's not on this particular image. I guess we need to fix that. Sorry. Sometimes we'll tag the partner organizations with, you know, a hashtag or something, just so that people who follow them will also see it, or will ask them to share posts and things like that. But I'm not aware of instances where we have taken this image and chopped it up and used pieces of it in different versions of the ad campaign. Usually when we use it, we use the whole thing. Did that answer the question? Great. Please.
Hi, so for someone who isn't professionally trained, how, is there like a Bible or a go-to to understand the psychology of graphic design? Like how you said people react to seeing people, or just knowing what colors to use for certain events, or like where do I go to find out that aspect of it, like the research?
So there are a few resources that I would recommend. I think the name of this book is DIY Design School. It's just like a paperback book you can buy from Amazon. It's probably about $10. It has all of the important principles of design in it, and it's super clear and easy to understand. They don't talk about tools like Canva because those are more contemporary, and I think this book was written a little bit before that. But all of the principles of design are there. The way that I think is easiest to learn about how to use the products is going to the blogs of the individual things. So for example, Canva's blog is a huge, important resource that's super, super useful. And then Adobe Spark, they have a blog tied to it that shows you explicitly how to use their product and different ways that people use it that's really, really successful in teaching. And then the third place I'd send you is Skillshare, which I actually want Mallory to talk more about because I don't know as much about Skillshare.
Well, I was going to say, so YouTube is always a great resource for free video tutorials.
Yes.
And so the Skillshare is kind of like, so what Netflix is to YouTube, Skillshare is kind of like the Netflix but for like online learning. So they have a similar like monthly subscription or whatever, like you would pay for Netflix, and then you can watch any of the video courses. And they have, it's all video course based, and then they'll have some like extra text information too, but it's pretty much videos that you watch. So they have them on all sorts of different things. There's plenty on like graphic design, there's plenty on different art and things. I've done a few, like I have one on Pinterest actually, if somebody needs to understand why Pinterest is powerful, you can go to my Skillshare class.
I need to see that one.
But yeah, you could totally go on Skillshare and learn from a lot of different artists and designers around the world.
First 3 months, 99 cents, I think. So it's worth it.
And in addition to the design elements, there's a whole science behind the specifics of posting on social media. Which platforms to use, what times of day to post, tools for getting the most number of people to see your post, how often should you post or repost. There's all sorts of scientific data about what works, what doesn't work, and I'm sure a lot of that same information is available in some of the same sources. Any other questions, y'all?
I do have another question.
Okay, another question.
How do you deal with, like, if you know something looks really good and then your audience doesn't think so, or like your team doesn't think so? How do you respond or react or advocate for it?
Yeah, just lower your expectations going into it. Like, design is just so emotional, particularly if you invested yourself in design. Oh, it's such a dangerous thing. It's like putting yourself out if you're trying to date somebody. Like, who knows what might happen, so just don't do it. Just go into being like, this is going to be a failure.
I always do multiple versions, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I always do multiple versions because there's always lots of stuff happening in my head when I'm doing something, and it may come out differently, you know, something, picture maybe on this side or centered on that side. But yeah, I usually get shot down as well. So.
No, you don't. Listen, you guys are also very young. And listen, as somebody my age, I can tell you, human beings will disappoint. And they don't always have such a beautiful design eye as you. And so don't take it personally, because I used to put together people's houses, and I had a woman put a $700 sofa on a on a $6,000 rug, and I swear it took me 2 weeks to get myself stabilized. I thought I was gonna have a meltdown, okay? So just don't take it personal.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's funny because in design school, that's the first thing they break you of, and so like one of my favorite Tom Driscoll memories, we would pin all of our work up on the wall, and then he would go up, and so you have to, like you said, we'd have to put 3 versions of every assignment up on the wall, and then we would stand up and explain why we made the decisions that we made. He'd walk up to your thing and he'd go, I really like this part of the design, but all of this that's not working. And then he'd go, this one, that's trash. And then he'd literally take it off the wall, ball it up, and put it in a trash can. And like the good thing about having that experience is it's like, I'm not my work, right? I'm a full human being that's good and honest and kind. And this is just something I made, and that's it. So I have to like fully detach myself from it and let it go.
And, you know, the same could also be said for social media posts, since this is a social media panel. I mean, how many of us have had the experience where you have sweated over a post that you were getting ready to put up there, thinking that the world would end once you post it, and 0 likes, 0 interactions at all for like really revealing stuff. So, you know, just you can't get too tied up in or personally invested in any of it.
It's something we haven't really covered, but graphics alone aren't how you're going to differentiate yourself online. A lot of it has to do with voice, being provocative, being weird. I mean, I know I've definitely made a career out of attempting to get above the fold. And I'm dealing with some of the biggest artists in the world who are running into all the same problems we're dealing with here. You know, we could overinvest ourselves in social media as well. One local success I had personally was I built a website called isitsnowinginola.com. Everyone's familiar with that shit? This was like 5 years ago when it got real cold. And I was like, shit, it's gonna snow. But it was so cold that day that pretty much the whole city got off. So everyone in the city showed up to the website. There were like 60,000 people on the website. And it just had like, it just said what the temperature was, and like, you know, it said like a cool Drew Brees has come through town. And I think I put a webcam out my window and just showed the parking lot and see whether or not it would snow, and like people walked into the webcam at some point. The funny thing is it did not snow. I moved to Brooklyn for a little bit for a couple of years, and while I was there, I would get these email messages. And it would be like from some old lady on the North Shore, and it would just be like, you ready? What are you talking about? She's like, it's cold over here. And like I swear, 2 months ago, someone was just like, you ready? I was like, because it was like 60 degrees. Oh, I love that stuff so much. It did actually snow last year, if you do remember that. So I flew a Believe plane across the top of the website, and like I put Drew Brees or Snowball or something. But you know, I didn't create a graphic for that. I created a evocative URL, Is It Snowing in NOLA? I just passed it to some friends, and of course it just snowballed from there. Yeah, exactly. But there's so much of that stuff, you know, like if you think about what's funny to you and your friends, that might actually work online just as well and be a representation of your brand.
Well, again, there's all sorts of science behind what works on social media and what doesn't. Native video that you actually upload to Facebook rather than a YouTube link, for example. All sorts of stuff. We have had plenty of panel discussions on these types of things in the past. I think some of you guys were on some of those panels. And all of those things are archived on our YouTube channel and also the WWOZ Facebook video archive, since WWOZ is the entity that does all of our video. All right, one more question. Please come and use the mic.
It's not a question, but I think this is a very important recap, and you guys can help recap too. Just because it doesn't get a like doesn't mean it's not important. Because when we went to the Metallica, did y'all see that cool aesthetic of like all those little Metallica. So if you like, this is just my silly Instagram of my school, but you can see the red. I sometimes get 1 like, sometimes I get 60. It depends on the algorithm. But look how it all looks. Don't be discouraged if that one photo doesn't get what you want, because when your viewer comes, it's like they see the whole aesthetic of it. So don't be discouraged by that. All right? You're doing awesome work. I really appreciate you guys, what you had to say. But as far as like, what is this called? A homepage? What is that called?
Yeah, profile.
Yeah, your profile. Maybe you could talk about that as well, instead of just like one picture of it. It's, you want the whole picture of your brand and the aesthetic of that.
Yeah, especially on Instagram when you get a follow, you have these people who do the deep dive, you know, and just like, what? And then just like.
Well, especially if you're a band, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you fall in love with a band, at the very beginning, you find a new band that you fall in love with, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what's everything that they got? And you're like all in their Instagram, and all in their Facebook and YouTube and everything. And so, yeah, if your music, because that's what we started with, if you're a musician and your music resonates with somebody and somehow, somewhere, they find your music and they like it, oh, will they start investigating? And they will absolutely find out everything that you've ever posted.
I like what she said. I think in general, don't sweat it. Like, this is my career to like try and make an impact online, and I'm still figuring it out every single day. I can tell you I've had a lot more disappointments than I've had grand successes, and that's just because the web reacts to different things. One easy tactic is simply putting yourself up against what the current topic of the day is, If there's a dance, you might have to do that dance, depending on what sort of impact you're trying to make in your career.
Okay, Drake.
Just say, I'm not saying make up the dance. Do not ever try and make up the dance, but maybe participate in the dance. That's
Kiki?
big time. Yes.
Do you love me?
Do not try and make up the dance.
When seriously fine.
Perhaps participate in the dance.
All right, so final thoughts on social media graphic wisdom. What best takeaway?
I'll go first. My greatest takeaway, and the thing that I wanted to continue to underscore, start with professional photos if you can. That's my highest recommendation. There are so many photographers in the city of New Orleans, and for $50, you can get an hour of somebody's time and get some really good photos of your band, and it is absolutely worth it to get professional photos, because professional photos are what make good design.
Which presumably, if you're paying that person a fee, those are photos that you own.
Yes, absolutely.
Madeline?
I would say, think about the full experience you want to leave your audience with, and that goes from the flyers and the artwork and the photography to what you wear on stage, to if you have like backup dancers or like stuff behind you. I mean, like think about like the huge artists that have left an impact on the world, right? Think about like Prince or Lady Gaga or Madonna or David Bowie, or like these people that there was this complete picture of artistry. And don't be afraid to play with social media or whatever, like the artist that you were showing, or like, if anybody follows Cher on Twitter, like that's a whole other level of Cher as an artist, which is hilarious, and it's not like she's promoting herself in this way that other people might promote themselves on Twitter, but you're seeing this other side of who that artist is. So don't be afraid to experiment and play and make it all part of your artistry.
That's a good one. Did you see Janelle Monáe at Voodoo? Speaking of creative stagewear.
But she's amazing.
Yeah.
Kia?
I would say consistency, and keeping your message on target, not, I guess cluttering your images with a whole bunch of text, straight to the point, colors, I like colors. And just being consistent with your message, your overall message.
Am I supposed to summarize everything now?
All right, that was great.
Yeah.
That was hard.
Yeah. I mean, definitely differentiate yourself online. attempt to make a voice that's unique to yourself, but also participate in what people are already talking about if possible, because it's an easy way in to pull in the outside. Definitely one of the major themes of my work is building campaigns that are more accessible than the artists themselves. I'll give you a rough example. A website that only plays a song if you show it a banana, I would tell the artist, this is for everyone that has a banana, not just for people who are fans of your music. You can take that into your social media as well. Like, what sort of content can I create? What sort of voice can I have that brings in an audience that's bigger than mine? A good joke, like Is It Snowing in NOLA, could do that. A good graphic could do that. Maybe something else, weird phrasing, a meme, who knows, you know. But experiment, don't sweat it, you know, definitely don't post something up and wait for the likes to come in. Just start thinking about the next thing you're gonna do. If you do find something that works, probably ride that train to the end of the line and worry about the next thing. But in general, just like take pride in your representation online and just keep moving forward with it.
All right, well, I think that's a pretty good note to end on. Thank you all so much for coming to this Sync Up workshop. And thank you all for being here. And once again, Justin Shield, Manifesting Interactive, Mallory Whitfield from Woodfarm, Kia Robinson Hatfield from right here at the Jackson Heritage Foundation, and Lee Martin from leemartin.com. All right, thank you all. See you next time.